Welcome to this e-learning package from the Sussex Resilience Forum. This package will cover the purpose of the plan, the roles and responsibilities of SRF members in the community, the recovery structures that will be put in place, and how the needs of the community are understood. You can stop and replay this package at any time. So, what is recovery? Chapter 5 of Emergency Response and Recovery defines recovery as the process of rebuilding, restoring and rehabilitating community following an emergency. The recovery phase is easily categorized as the longest element of the emergency. Where a response phase could last a few days at most, the recovery will most probably continue for years past the initial incident. The Sussex Resilience Forum Recovery Plan details the roles and responsibilities for organisations in Sussex to assist communities to recover from emergencies. The Recovery Plan details the arrangements for recovery across Sussex and sets out the expectations on organisations in relation to the rebuilding, restoring and rehabilitating of the community. In relation to an emergency incident, the response phase is led as per the Sussex Emergency Response and Recovery document by the Sussex Strategic Coordinating Group, usually chaired by Sussex Police. A standing agenda item on initial meeting of the SCG is the consideration of recovery and the activation of a recovery coordinating group. The SCG chair will usually delegate activation of recovery arrangements to the local authority representatives. The RCG chair is then appointed from the lead local authority to manage the recovery aspects of the incident through monitoring response progress and to see where this can aid recovery. Simultaneously, they will be putting in place structures to manage the recovery which are detailed later. The handover from the response phase to the recovery phase takes place when the chairs of both groups agree the response phase is complete. There is a formal document that details the handover arrangements. This you can find in the SRF Recovery Plan. The structure of the Recovery Coordinating Group is shown here. The formation of the Recovery Group is led by the appointed lead from the local authority. The formation of smaller subgroups is dependent on the initial incident and the needs already noted. The smaller subgroups are shown here, and we will go into these in more detail shortly. The default terms of reference for the Recovery Coordinating Group is explained in the SRF plan, but they are to restore the following key services as a matter of priority, accompanied by a list of identified priority services. Agree and review an overarching recovery strategy. Establish a collaborative and flexible approach to helping Sussex communities recover from this incident and achieve relative normality, using individual and collective resources and coordinating funding arrangements where possible. Establish and maintain communication channels with the public. The role of the RCG chair is a key one. They appoint the deputy chair of the group, appoint or nominate the chairs for the subgroups where appropriate, and appoint the recovery coordinator. The coordinator is a pivotal role and will provide support to the RCG chair to enable swift follow-up on RCG actions which are not delegated to the subgroups. Ensure that the RCG structure is implemented. Establish, coordinate and oversee the work of the RCG Secretariat. function as the focal point of contact for the overall coordination of the recovery phase when the RCG is not sitting, arrange for an appropriate office space for the RCG. The RCG chair attends, whilst they are still sitting, the strategic coordinating group meetings to represent the needs of the recovery process at the SCG and ensure that decisions made, where appropriate, aid in the recovery of the community. The remit of the Health and Welfare subgroup is to coordinate the recovery of health and welfare provision for those people and health and social care services affected by the incident in support of a return to relative normality. It is required to assess the health and social care requirements for those affected, and take the leading role in facilitating the recovery of the affected community's health and welfare needs. Coordinate the provision of a full range of practical assistance, support, and, where necessary, counselling to those directly or indirectly affected by the emergency. Enable the community to have easy access to health and welfare assistance. The Business and Economic Recovery subgroup is required to assess the economic implications for the affected area, and if there are any economic impacts that will affect areas outside the area affected by the incident. The group will develop an action plan that includes immediate economic support required and a longer-term strategic recovery plan that enables increased economic opportunities. Establish a proactive and integrated framework of support for business such that businesses can resume trading as soon as possible. The Housing and Homelessness subgroup will give assistance and guidance to residents and vulnerable people affected. This may be provided through representation from housing departments at humanitarian assistance centres and enabling easy access to district council housing officers. The group will consider all aspects of housing and also address longer-term housing issues, including contamination and repair, the effects on existing communities from an influx of temporary residents, and the needs of those who may become homeless if their own emergency housing arrangements break down. In many major emergencies, there is an element of damage to structures and pollution or contamination of properties, watercourses and farmland. Before residents can return home, business returns to normality, or assessments on infrastructures can be commenced, it is vital that the RCG considers the environmental impacts in terms of determining the intensity and makeup of any pollution or contamination, and the impact it will have upon the environment and the people who live and work in the area. This is the remit of the Environmental Site Clearance Group. The Infrastructure subgroup has the responsibility to assess the scale of the damage to the infrastructure within the area affected by the incident, and to establish a multi-agency programme coordinated to ensure that the infrastructure recovery is carried out according to the priorities set by the RCG. The group need to consider the community aspects of the task and to ensure that information from the area of the incident which has directly affected the community is reported back to the RCG. The Community Recovery Committee, one of the subgroups of the Recovery Coordinating Group, reflects community priorities, feelings and initiatives, and assists in informing the wider community of East Sussex, West Sussex and Brighton and Hove of the progress of the recovery. This committee would also assist in the impact assessment of the affected community or communities. This means that the committee essentially brings all the elements of the community together to complete the picture of the impact. The committee has a unique role in the RCG as it is the focal point for all community concerns and is a non-executive interest group rather than an executive action group such as others. The default position of the SRF recovery plan is that the committee will be chaired by a local strategic partnership chair or a local authority director, or elected member with responsibility for communities from the area affected. The Gold Information Group will support the communications activity of the RCG and its subgroups, and continue to set the overall direction for multi-agency communications activity. Organisations involved in recovery will continue to provide a Gold Information representative. The role of the Finance Group is to explore, pursue and manage different streams for financial aid, to advise on recording of expenditure to aid reimbursement, to audit and monitor all recovery work expenditure and report on this to the RCG, to consider any litigation, criminal or public inquiry issues, providing advice to the RCG and its other subgroups, and to provide the link to the coroner's activities and expenditure. The Scientific and Technical Advisory Cell may well have been formed in the initial response stages of the emergency. The STAC, as it is commonly known, provides, as the name suggests, advice on the technical and scientific impacts of the emergency, and what may need to be considered in terms of response and recovery to the SCG and RCG respectively. The requirement for agencies to support the recovery process is wide-ranging in comparison to an initial response phase. The areas of the organisation that do not traditionally respond may have actions to undertake as part of the recovery process. You should consider which roles would your organisation fulfil in the recovery phase, which resources would it provide, and which post holders would attend or perhaps chair subgroups. One such area would be finance. The use of coordination in the expenditure during the recovery phase will lead to less duplication and could also provide greater savings with coordinated purchasing. Detailed records of the expenditure by organisations are imperative, and there may be opportunities to claim funds back from central government or to apply for funding, e.g. regenerate damaged areas. Do you know how recovery actions would be coordinated within your organisation whilst maintaining your business as usual activities? Throughout the recovery process, the aim is to return to the new normality. Thus it may be that agencies will for some time work in an enhanced business as usual basis. Throughout this time, the issues that the communities have experienced will lessen, but there will be recurring issues and anniversaries to come. The Sussex Recovery Plan detailed suggested agendas for the initial and potentially the subsequent meetings of the RCG and its subgroups. The agendas should ensure that all members of the RCG are able to gain an understanding of the impacts, relay and address important issues for resolving, and to ensure all members agree a plan to respond to the needs of the community. The Lewis floods of 2000 and the June floods of 2012 illustrated some of the challenges of recovering from a major emergency. In Lewis in 2000, the town was cut in half for 3 days by floodwaters. Around 600 homes and 200 businesses were flooded, and over 1,000 people were displaced. The main retail and commercial areas of the town flooded, key infrastructure was knocked out, extensive power cuts lasted for up to 6 days, and pollution by sewage, oil and other pollutants also occurred. There were large areas of farmland flooded in the Ouse Valley, and livestock was lost. In June 2012, over one Sunday night and into the following day, over 110 millimetres of rain fell. This equated to a maximum return period of 1 in 193 years in some areas. Over 450 properties experienced flooding. Roads were flooded, and the Arran district was worst hit, with over 350 properties flooded. Efforts continue to support affected residents in dealing with the effect this incident had on their homes and circumstances. The lessons learned from both of these recent incidents in Sussex are shown here. More often than not, it is the recovery phase that can be tougher than the immediate incident. Once the flooding has subsided, or has been pumped away, the recovery process for those affected takes a long time. In a number of flood-affected areas, some residents took over a year to return to their properties. This then has an impact on local services to adapt and respond to the changing needs of those affected, and indeed to those not directly affected. It is vital, as with the response phase, that the flow of information is good, and that messages are clear, concise, and accurate. People during the recovery phase will contact a number of different agencies for differing needs, and it is important that the information they are provided with is accurate and clear, as this ensures a smooth process for the recovery. Regular updates to the public are vital to ensure all those affected are communicated with. Traditional, or indeed more modern methods such as social media all need to be considered, especially as those out of their homes may not have access to their usual methods, such as when their laptop or PC is lost in floodwater. It is vital to ensure that those affected are involved in the planning of the recovery phase, as this will ensure that the new normality is restored as soon as is possible, but with the views of the community considered. Community input at this stage is a prime opportunity to look at the new normality and see if changes can be incorporated to improve local conditions. And local groups may indeed be well placed to offer practical support to affected residents. Having almost completed this e-learning module, we would urge you to obtain a copy of the Sussex Resilience Forum Recovery Plan. Read through the roles and responsibilities and consider the roles that you are likely to be asked to undertake. The Sussex Resilience Forum Recovery Plan is available through your usual contacts internally for emergency planning or management, the National Resilience Extranet, if you have access, the East Sussex County Council's website, or you can contact the Sussex Resilience Forum Secretariat. Thank you for watching. You can now close this presentation and undertake the quiz.